Trump has threatened to entirely blow up Iran and the world's largest gas field, the South Pars, if Tehran launches any more attacks on Qatari LNG.
Hungary's veto of a €90 billion loan for Ukraine, the widening war in the Middle East, and persistently high energy prices are set to dominate Thursday's EU summit.
EU lawmakers have scheduled a committee vote for Thursday to revive a stalled trade deal with the United States following months of resistance.
US President Donald Trump has threatened to blow up the entirety of Iran and the world's largest gas field, the South Pars, after Tehran launched an attack on Wednesday targeting Qatari LNG. Doha says its largest facility, Ras Laffan, sustained significant damage in the attacks, which Iran fired in retaliation for a Wednesday strike on its South Pars field. Trump, in a post on Truth Social, said he does not want to authorize this level of violence against Iran because of its long-term implications, but won't hesitate to if Doha is again targeted. He also confirmed that Israel was behind the attack, which he says was carried out with no U.S. knowledge or involvement, out of, quote, anger for what has taken place in the Middle East. The incident sparked global outrage, particularly among Iran's neighbors in the Gulf, many of whom were convening in Riyadh, which was also targeted at the time of the meeting. Saudi Arabia says the escalation has shattered all remaining hopes for normalcy.
What I care about now is that the attacks on my country and on my neighboring countries that are not involved in this conflict end. That's all I'm interested in. And we're going to use every lever we have, political, economic, diplomatic, and elsewise. But I have to tell you, what little trust there was before has completely been shattered, has been shattered on multiple levels.
The attacks have poured fuel on the fire in an already rapidly deteriorating global energy price crisis. Brent crude hovered consistently around the $100 a barrel mark prior to attacks on Iranian and Qatari gas fields, which is already 40% higher than pre-war figures, but has since shot up to $108. Fighting continues to rage as U.S.-Israeli attacks pummel Tehran daily, and Iranian attacks target Israel and the wider region. The death toll has also risen across the board, now surpassing 1,400 in Iran, over 900 in Lebanon, 17 in Israel, 21 in the Gulf states, and 13 U.S. troops.
The 27 leaders of the European Union are heading into a stormy summit on Thursday, with Hungary's veto of a €90 billion loan for Ukraine, the widening war in the Middle East, and persistently high energy prices set to dominate the talks. From the moment leaders arrive, all eyes will be on Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, whose decision to block the support loan for Ukraine at the very last stage of the legislative process has caused widespread outrage. Orbán vetoed the loan in mid-February in response to the interruption of oil deliveries through the Druzhba pipeline, which he claims is deliberately being kept shut by Ukraine. Another major talking point on Thursday's agenda will be the widening war in the Middle East and the far-reaching consequences it has triggered worldwide. Europeans were caught off guard when US President Donald Trump last week asked for their help to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, a vital passage for energy exports that Iran has closed off. The 27 leaders agree that energy prices, which have remained stubbornly high since the 2022 disruption, are a major problem, but disagree on how to tackle them. As an immediate solution to offset high energy bills, Brussels recommends that governments either lower taxes or roll out subsidies, both of which affect revenues. The long-term recipe, however, is far less clear, as leaders remain fiercely divided on the need for structural reforms of the energy market.
The EU has set its sights on a landmark trade deal with Australia as Commission President Ursula von der Leyen prepares to visit Sydney and Canberra for a final round of talks next week. The hard-fought agreement collapsed in 2023 due to a standoff over agriculture, with Canberra accusing Brussels of blocking market access for Australian meat exports. However, mounting global trade tensions and sweeping US tariffs have revived negotiations as the EU races to diversify its partners. The Commission knows that 83% of EU trade now takes place with countries beyond the United States, following recent deals with India, Mexico and Indonesia. For Brussels, the deal is also a strategic move to secure critical raw materials, including lithium and cobalt, needed for the bloc's green energy transition. Beyond economy, the agreement carries significant geopolitical weight in the Indo-Pacific, where rivalry with China continues to intensify. Von der Leyen's visit marks the final stretch of a process designed to strengthen ties with a like-minded partner in one of the world's most dynamic economic regions.
This conflict.
EU lawmakers have scheduled a committee vote for Thursday in a bid to revive a stalled trade deal with the United States following months of resistance. The move aims to kickstart a process long delayed by fundamental disagreements over digital rules and health standards, as well as mounting tensions over Greenland and Iran. Initially struck last summer by Ursula von der Leyen and President Donald Trump, the deal imposes 15% US tariffs on EU goods, while Europe cuts its own duties to zero. Brussels originally marketed the lopsided deal as the best of negative scenarios. However, the agreement was thrown into disarray earlier this year after the US Supreme Court declared the president's initial tariffs illegal, adding fresh uncertainty to the terms. To reach a compromise, MEPs negotiated until the last minute to include a clause allowing the EU to suspend the deal if its territorial integrity is threatened, a direct response to previous US threats regarding Greenland. A sunset clause has also been added, meaning the agreement will expire in March 2028 unless it is explicitly renewed. While the European Commission is pushing for full approval by the end of the month, political groups remain divided, with some lawmakers calling for more time to debate the deal's impact.
Overall,
Iranians have celebrated the annual fire festival despite military attacks from Israel and the United States and the Islamic Republic's prohibition of fireworks. Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of the last Shah of Iran, called on citizens to hold the celebrations while urging the US and Israel to protect Iranians from Iranian security forces. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the people to celebrate, saying Israel was watching over them from above. In videos recorded in Tehran, security forces can be seen entering an apartment complex with a large convoy of vehicles, while chanting slogans and gunshots can be heard. Çaharshanbe Suri is an ancient Persian festival held on the last Wednesday of the year. It involves jumping over fire to burn away negativity and start the new year positively. In recent years, the Islamic Republic has consistently opposed these celebrations, and young Iranians often use the occasion to express their discontent with the regime's policies. About 90 ships, including oil tankers, have crossed the Strait of Hormuz since the start of the conflict with Iran. The country has exported more than 16 million barrels of oil since the beginning of March, according to maritime and trade data, despite the waterway being effectively closed and Iran claiming it will attack tankers attempting to cross. Many of the vessels were engaged in so-called dark transits, evading Western sanctions and oversight, and are likely to have links to Iran. More recently, vessels linked to India and Pakistan have also crossed the strait as governments step up negotiations. China remains the largest buyer. Oil prices rose above $100 a barrel in recent weeks, prompting US President Donald Trump to urge allies and trading partners to send warships to reopen the route in a bid to bring prices down. The Strait of Hormuz is a key route for global oil and gas, carrying about 1/5 of the world's crude oil. A Russian gas tanker has been drifting in the Mediterranean Sea for nearly 2 weeks, posing a serious environmental threat. The massive 277-meter tanker, blackened by fire, has been adrift since explosions occurred on the 3rd of March, causing the crew to abandon ship. Moscow claims that the vessel, part of sanctioned Shadow Fleet, was attacked by Ukrainian naval drones. Kyiv has not commented. According to Russian reports, explosions continue on board, gas leaks are being detected, and localized fires are breaking out. The tanks still contain about 700 tons of fuel and large volumes of natural gas, representing a high emergency risk. Environmental campaigners warn that a leak or explosion could cause long-term damage to one of the most biodiverse regions in the Mediterranean. The vessel is drifting approximately 50 nautical miles from Malta, where rescue specialists are already on site. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova stated that Moscow is keeping the situation under control as the flag state, but emphasized that international law places the responsibility for preventing an environmental threat on coastal states. While discussions continue over who should intervene, the gas tanker continues its uncontrolled course and the risk of an environmental disaster is growing.
Argentina has formally withdrawn from the World Health Organization, WHO, 1 year after announcing its decision. According to Foreign Minister Pablo Cano, Argentina's withdrawal from the WHO is effective after the formal notification made on 17 March 2025 to the UN Secretary General. President Javier Milei and his team's dispute with the WHO aligns with US President Donald Trump's criticisms of and pending withdrawal from the international body, with the US administration criticizing the organization's mishandling of the COVID-19 pandemic and other global health crises. The U.S. administration handed in its formal withdrawal announcement in January. Despite the withdrawal, the government assured that it will, quote, continue to promote international cooperation in health through bilateral agreements and at regional levels. The announcement has provoked criticism from local experts who consider the measure an aberration from a health policy point of view.